Next up is Paul Hannigan. Paul is the president of Letterkenny Institute of Technology and has been since January 1998. And to paraphrase one of Marion's questions, how do we know that Paul is going to have anything useful to say to us about quality today? Well, I think there are a number of pieces of evidence in his favour. The first is that having served 10 years as president, he was re-elected for a second 10-year term a couple of years ago. He's also been a former member of the HEA and chairman of the audit committee of the CAO, and he was the former chairman of the Institute of Technology Ireland. So hopefully, Paul, you can live up to that billing.
Thanks very much. I think I got this. It's okay. Thanks very much, Chairman. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon, particularly because I was the chairman of the Institutional Review Group in Griffith, so I'm delighted that they invited me back. I'm not so sure if that's because it worked out well for them or because I did a good job at chairing the panel, I'm not sure. But I'm delighted to be back here this afternoon. I think somebody has a sense of humour to put me on after lunch, but then to put Marion Coy on before me, it's just a difficult afternoon to deal with. But we'll do our best anyway. Myself and Marion have worked together for the last 10 years, roughly anyway. And I suppose Marion has now become the Bertie Ahern of the Institute of Technology sector, that she stepped down before all the trouble starts, and she's going around telling everybody how great it was during her time. And she's taken it on an international stage as well. She's been in Switzerland recently. She hasn't made it to Nigeria yet, but that's the next step that she's. But I wish her the best in her retirement, and I know it's. We'll see. So I'm taking a slightly different approach to Marion, but a complementary one, I hope, in that some of the topics that she brought up, particularly around cultural development, around the use of the European standards and guidelines, those sort of things will weave its way into some of the things I'm going to talk about. But basically, I'm looking at it from a practitioner's point of view, both as somebody who has chaired an institutional review group, who has been on the other side of it from an institution, presenting in front of a panel, and also been as a member of an institutional review group in another institution as well. And really what I'm trying to give here is a personal opinion as to the sort of preparation you need to make in order to be ready for the institutional review process itself, and particularly the panel visit, but then also what happens out the other end of that. How do you take it forward? How do you make it work for yourself? And how do you actually make it a worthwhile process from start to finish? And I think that what I'm doing really is taking a sort of a do's and don'ts list, if you like. And if it's very practical, I'm very sorry, I apologise for that, but this is just my own personal take on it. Some of the things some of the traps you can fall into and could avoid if you think about it a little bit in terms of your own preparation and in terms of the stage you're at in the development of the process. So we have a bit of a list here. First of all, focus on your own institution. What is your own institution? What do you want out of this? Okay? You know, you look at the process in terms of what you're being asked to do by HETAC and the amount of things you have to do. But basically, the bottom line here is that you are evaluating your own institution. Okay? And I think that's a very important starting point. Don't start from any other one. What do you want to get out of this process? What do you want to get out of it? It doesn't matter what HETAC wants. It doesn't matter what the makeup of the panel is. It has to come back to yourself in terms of your own institution. What are we going to get out of this at the end of it? Okay? And is it? You have the prescribed approach from HETAC, which you have to go through, okay? But there is space in there for the negotiation of additional priorities that you want to see addressed within the process. Take that opportunity, okay? Don't just leave it under the 6 headings or whatever it is within the prescribed institutional review approach. Look at it and say, okay, there's 1 or 2 other things that are specifically relevant to our institution, and I would like them examined as part of this process. And make sure you get that in there, okay? So what are you trying to do here? Is it a management opportunity? Is there something that from a management perspective you want to actually bring about within your institution? Is there something that you want to do regarding a sort of a change that you want to bring about? Some major change that you want to bring about that you've been thinking about for a while? You're not exactly sure how to bring that on board. Is that what you want to do? Or going back to Marion's point, is it a cultural change? Are you trying to change the way you do things within your organization? If you take a very simple definition of culture, culture in any organization, a very simple definition of that is the way we do things around here. Are you trying to influence that? Are you trying to change that? Are you trying to make it different? So don't see it as a mechanical exercise. If you see it as a mechanical exercise, forget about it. You're going to get no benefit out of it. It's just going to be seen as an administrative burden that you have to get done and get out of the way, and nobody gets anything from that process. Nothing at all. So you've got to be very definite about what you want. Don't see it as an administrative process, ticking boxes. You know, that'll take us 6 months to do. We'd stop everything else, get that done, and get it out of the way. That is of no benefit to anybody. And it defeats the purpose before you actually start. And then in terms of engaging the people that you need to engage in the process from the start, you've got to engage the staff and the learners. You've got to engage the people in the institution that you work with, that this is part and parcel of what we need to do. There's no point in doing a whole load of background material, background information, and then go and presenting a fait accompli to your academic staff or to your administrative staff or whatever and say, look, this thing's on next week, you wouldn't come up and just do a couple of hours for us or whatever. That's a waste of time. You've got to bring people in from the start and say, look, going back to the earlier bit, what are we trying to achieve from this? What do we want from it? And we need you on board in order to deliver this effectively. And you need to engage the learners as well. It can't come as a shock to them that you get an invitation from the review group, we want to meet 10 students this afternoon. So we better go and try and find 10 students that are able to talk, people that know something about the institution, people that will engage the panel. You can't just pick them up like that. They've got to be part of the process. They've got to understand why you're doing this, and also from a student's perspective, what the benefits are to them as students within the college, affecting the quality assurance and everything else within that. You have to listen to contrary views. Don't get into a groupthink situation. You know, groupthink really means that you all come to a consensus, even if it's the wrong consensus. So if you sit down and everybody agrees that that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right, but you haven't critically examined exactly what you're doing, you end up coming to a consensus that's over here, and the reality might be somewhere over here. So you've got to listen to people who are saying within the institution what the contrary views are. Whatever mechanisms you use to do that, whatever committees you set up, whatever formal structures are within the institution, you've got to listen to the person who complains or gives out or questions what you're doing. And there's a tendency sometimes to just push that aside. You know, that doesn't fit. That's not the majority view here, and we'll not listen to it. You've got to listen to the contrary view and deal with that and include it. And external stakeholders. To give you an example, there's always a section in this where the panel wants to meet people that you engage with from a community perspective or a business perspective or whatever it is. On one of the institutional reviews I was in, the institution made this a social event. So when the panel were sitting waiting to meet the external stakeholders, about 50 people arrived into the room. They arrived in at 5 o'clock in the evening in anticipation of a cheese and wine reception, which was organised afterwards. And it was absolutely useless session, because even though the people may have had an interaction with the institution or may have had some engagement with them, there was no possible way that the panel could engage in any meaningful way with a group of that size. They couldn't get any feedback from them. So while it was seen from the institutional's perspective as a show of strength, from the panel's perspective, it was an absolute disaster. So you're better having a small number of very focused stakeholders who know exactly what's going on and that have a real engagement with you. And if they don't have a real engagement with you, that they sort of tangentially know what you're doing, get them in beforehand. Get them in to rehearse the situations, to tell them what to expect, to give them an indication of the type of questions that they can face, and that they have a real sense of how they might deal with that, without being too prescriptive or anything else, just to explain, you know, this is the way it works. You know, you're working with us on this project or that project, and then allow that to develop from their own perspective. And I think that's a very important element of it. And rehearsing situations should not only be with the external people, but with your own internal staff and students as well. You get the chance then to meet the chairperson, the person who's going to chair the panel coming to your institution as part and parcel of the process from HETAC. Take the chance there to engage. That's your chance for real engagement with HETAC, to shape the agenda. While the agenda is prescribed to a certain extent, you're now getting the opportunity as the head of your institution, with whoever you want to bring with you, to engage with the chairperson, engage with the secretary of the group, and to try and frame the agenda that you can identify things that you want to see. Obviously, HETAC will have things that they want to look at, but there are other things that you want to get on the agenda as well. And use that as a very frank discussion in terms of how you see the thing developing, and also highlight issues that you want addressed. Okay? Now, that might be things that you want to accentuate that are very positive about your institution, but it might be also, on the other hand as well, say, you know, we have a particular weakness here and we'd like you to pursue that, just to see what the response will be from the various staff within the college at the time. And then be comfortable with the agenda, because you've got to go back, you've done the negotiation on behalf of your institution, you're going back in and said, here's the agenda we've negotiated with HETAC. And people say, Jesus, why did you put that in there? You know, how did that end up in there? You know, you're negotiating on our behalf and you come back with this agenda. How did that happen? So you've got to be comfortable with what you're coming back with and how you're going to proceed from that perspective. Documentation. Now, this is too many points here, but just trying to get things across. You're really restricted to a very short document, okay? And a lot of people say, oh, we can't do justice to an institution with a document of that size, so we give you 400 appendices along with it, and then you can't carry it in boxes in and out to the panels, etc. Look, you need to look at the personality of your own institution. What are you? Are you a young, dynamic organization starting off? Are you a more mature organization that's trying to reorganize itself? What is the personality of your organization? What kind of a person is your organization? And you need to reflect that in the documentation that goes before the panel. Because with the nature of these panels, and a large international engagement with it as well, they don't know anything about you. So this is your first chance to make your case about what your institution is about. And it's very important, the written word is very important at this stage, to create that image as to what you're trying to get across. And it's not easy. This is a very difficult part of it. And if you don't put the work in there, you can create a very bad impression initially with the panel that are reading the documentation. Or on the other hand, if you do put the work into it, you can really get off on a good foot and people are looking forward. I can't wait to get to that institution. You know, they've done a really good job here. They've reflected well on what the work they're doing, and we're really looking forward to engage with it. Whereas if you give a very bland document that is very descriptive, that really doesn't give any personality of the institution, I'll say, they didn't really bother with this. You know? So you're pushing a panel into an opinion before the thing actually starts at all.